Hey y'all, I'm Brad of Brave the Woods. Joining us today is my good friend and super talented designer, illustrator, and collage artist, John Mata. I love all of John's work, but his collage work really resonates with me. And I can't tell exactly what it is, but I think it's a combination of all the things that he has. He has really beautiful colors. The palettes are just vibrant and they have high contrast, but feel very modern and fresh. But he mixes in these older elements and photos. He's really, maybe this is really what it is, but he loves that mid-century space era, and so do I. So that they kind of get me there. But even without that theme going on in his art, I love the textural qualities that he implements, and those are all custom textures, by the way. So I'm just intrigued by the whole process, and I want to ask him so many questions. So without further ado, here is John Mata.
Hey, Brad. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Can't wait to share some tips with you guys.
Awesome. Thanks for sticking around, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we've been talking about trying to do this for a little while now.
Yeah, it's just our schedules are crazy right now.
Yeah, well, this is cool. I'm glad because I actually have your artwork on my walls, and I can't see it in this particular shot, but in most of my videos here, you'll see it in the background. You'll see some of his space related artwork, which
I'm obsessed with space for some reason. I don't know what it is. I think it's the era. I feel like myself, I was born in the wrong era, so I just kind of gravitate naturally toward that. I feel like they did so much with so little, and it's crazy. It's like we have all the tools in the world, and we can't nearly match what they've done back in the past. It's crazy.
Seriously, yeah. And you focus a lot on, I know you do space in general, you love space, and you and I both feel like we're in the wrong era. If you can see, everything's 60s back here, which I feel like is a similar era to what
exactly.
I feel like you identify most with. But the lunar landing, like that feels
Yes.
like that's what you illustrate all the time.
Exactly. For some reason, I'm obsessed with Apollo 11.
Yeah.
It just seems like it has so much cool textures, cool colors. I don't know, it's just something about it. And then, everywhere
funny?
you look.
Oh, sorry, I'm cutting you off, but I think it's
No,
funny
go ahead.
because I associate like Apollo 11 with like the cool colors and textures, but I only do that because I've seen your art.
That's funny.
Yeah. You've made it colorful and psychedelic in some ways too for me. And that's why I feel like I'm like, man, this is like really bringing this to life. So I don't, it's funny that you say it like that because like, that's the only reason why I think that.
I think I try to do something a little different that you may not have seen back in that kind of era.
Yeah.
I know there's so much cool stuff like badges and pins and posters and stuff, but I try to add a little something different, some textures that maybe they didn't use back then. It's just try to change it up a little bit.
Well, I thoroughly enjoy it. So I'm actually, instead of, we can continue to chat about this in your inspiration because I'm definitely intrigued, but I really want to see you kind of walk us through some of the stuff that you've been making, or you're working on now, you have made, but what do you want to do today?
Absolutely. I can kind of show a little bit on this particular image that I'm working on. Well, I've already posted it, but there's some little things that maybe, I can show you how I created the textures, kind of some of the layout that I did on it. It's kind of hard for me to classify the kind of art this is. Some people would call it abstract. Some people collage. I really don't know.
But it's really, you got the modernist feel to it, so it's a modern.
It's retro, like using colors and overlays and just one color textures, and I'd kind of be happy to show you some of the ways that I kind of created some of that stuff for sure.
Oh yeah. Before we even and by the time we finish this and I have the title up on this video, we'll actually have a term for what you do. But right now I don't have it.
You can give that term to me. So
yeah, I'll give that term to you. But
and I obviously it's creating textures, using your own textures, which I think you're a big proponent for.
Yes.
You do your own textures as well. I started using this, for some reason I gravitated toward torn paper. I started using, that a lot in some of my pieces. I think.
Do you have an example of what piece you put that in? I feel like.
Yes, absolutely. This one right here. I used it. Yeah, these background right here.
I would have never assumed that was a torn paper. I would have just been like, That was just I don't even, sometimes you never like guess. You're like, that's probably like a weird
Absolutely.
brush or whatever, but yeah.
And this one, I mean, I was kind of toying with different ideas on how to create that look, and it was as simple as I took some black copy paper and then I just pasted it to some black paper, and then I just waited till it dried and ripped it off.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. And, I kind of went into the channels. Actually, you can go in and just kind of darken it up a little bit to really kind of get that contrast. Obviously, you can use levels as well, but I use curves sometimes.
Sure. You're in Photoshop then, correct?
Absolutely, in Photoshop. And then I just kind of, it might be obvious to some people, but I kind of, you go into the channels. Somebody taught me when I was working not too long ago how to create one color, and it's completely changed my way of working. It was like a light bulb went off in my head.
Oh my gosh, show me now. Now
yes,
you've built up the anticipation. Let me see.
Just go into the channels, and then I usually just go to the RGB channel,
Okay.
and I just hold down Command and click on RGB, and it kind of creates this selection. And then I just start a new layer, and I just fill it.
What?
And then you turn it off, and there it is. I mean, there's your texture.
I do it completely different, which isn't important. That's why I like watching.
Million different ways of doing it, obviously. And what's really cool about this technique is I'm going to just kind of give it a little darker background so you can kind of see what's going on. But there's your texture. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I sometimes, if I feel like I still want to see some more of that texture, this really nice looking kind of pieces kind of come through, I'll just select it again, and then I'll just create a mask. And it's basically just masking itself back. And you can...
Oh, crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can just see more of that kind of nice little areas coming through, and it's pretty simple. And that's exactly how I created these little torn paper areas right here on this one. It's as simple as that.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like for instance on this piece right here, I mean, I didn't really know where I was going with it. I think that's
what I was going to ask.
Yes,
I would never know where to start.
No, exactly. And that's the beauty of doing an abstract piece is there's really no rules. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, there's, rhythm and balance.
Your design principles and things like that, yeah.
That they tell you to stick to. And I agree with it, a lot of it, obviously. But I think that's what makes abstract design just so much fun, because you just try something, and if it doesn't work, try something else. It's as simple as that.
Pretty liberating.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and when I started this piece, you can kind of see, I started with the idea of doing an abstract, XI for 11.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe kind of try to hide that into the design a little bit. And then I just like slowly started adding little things like the torn paper, which even that's kind of a cool look to it.
Seriously, yeah. It all looks like an album cover art.
That's a good point. And, like the little crazy, circles back here behind, I call them kind of waves. I mean, that I took that from Illustrator. I just had some little circles that I created right here.
Yeah.
And I just brought that into Photoshop. Let's see here.
Yeah, I'm curious how you do that.
Yeah,
Did you always see those? I always wonder, like, where are people getting these?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing about Photoshop and Illustrator. There's so many hidden tools, so many little things that you kind of gloss over and you really never use them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's pretty cool. And I just went into Liquify, which again, I don't know how many people use Liquify, but it was just as simple as just kind of moving some pixels around, doing some kind of weird shapes, and then just rendering it out. And that's how I created these.
Oh, dude, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of started adding them to the background, just slowly.
So I used Liquify. I remember like when I first learned Photoshop just to like mess with people's faces.
That was the best part.
That was the extent of my Liquify knowledge. So
I think I used that in plastic wrap, which nobody uses plastic wrap anymore for anything. Or I guess you shouldn't, right?
This is much more responsible. Yeah.
Exactly. And on these little waves, I call them, to kind of give this little grainy feel to it. Yeah. All I did was, as you can kind of see, it's already a little.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
I just created a mask, which if you're not using masks, you definitely need to get on that.
Use masks.
You have to use it. And I just used my gradient tool do this all the time and just kind of grade it out a little bit. And then I just went into, I think, noise and just add noise.
Oh, to make it look a little,
Yep,
yeah,
a little grainy.
grainier.
And it,
Oh, that's super
it's
smart.
funny because grain will change the whole look of the piece. I mean, it's one of my favorite tools to use for sure.
Makes it feel more like, for me, like when you add like the why I like textures and that weathered kind of look is because it takes it away from just being a flat image on a screen that seems intangible, right? There's no, I don't have any emotional connection to something necessarily when it's like that. So when I feel like I'm like, oh, I can kind of, my mind is telling me like, oh, I could totally feel that. Like I know what that would feel like. Like it looks like an old poster, or it looks like it's, you know, that ink's worn. I know what it might smell like because I can get those visual cues. Whereas if it's just flat, it's harder for me to do that. So I feel like I kind of associate and like with, or what do you call associate? But I guess I would say, yeah, I kind of, it almost feels like, I guess I could associate. It's a
comfort. It's a comfort for me. When I was in art school, our teachers would make us, you know, do drawings on huge pieces of paper, and it's blank and it's clean, and you don't know where to start. I mean, most of the time you're just kind of staring at it and you're just like, I don't even know where to start on this. And one of her techniques was just to throw the piece of paper on the ground and just walk on it, get it dirty, kind of. And it's like, it kind of takes that like, where do I start out of the picture immediately because your paper's already dirty. And I feel like grain to me is like a comfort, and it's kind of weird and funny, I like that. You know, when I was working on this piece, like, again, I was just using that awesome one color texture technique, and I just started adding little pieces like that into this one. And, you know, there's good old Neil.
So, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. So,
sure.
Really quick, I know this is probably something that people already know, but could you show real quick, just for those who are following along, like, I want to make a collage like this. Sure. Just the clipping mask, like real quick, like what's the quickest way to make a clipping mask?
All I would do is just cutting out these people. Mm-hmm. I almost said, let's see. Here's a good example. You know, he had a white background. I just used the pen tool.
Okay.
Good old pen tool, which gotta know about the pen tool.
Yes.
And just quickly just kind of went around. I didn't really do it too clean.
Sure.
Just went around and removed him from the background.
Okay.
And that way I could come back into something like, back into this piece right here and have him kind of separated from his background and then kind of busting out of that shape that I created, this little shape back here, have him kind of stand out a little bit. And it creates depth. It creates, you know, it allows this texture in the back to kind of flow into his head. And that, again, is another good reason to learn the pen tool, another good reason to learn a lot of these little tools like masks. I mean, masks, again, I've said it 1,000 times. It's one of the coolest things that Photoshop lets you do.
What's the quickest way you put on a mask on here, a clipping mask?
As far as the clipping mask goes. Yeah,
in your toolbar, in your layers.
I cut them out from the background, and then I just go to path, and then I just select it, and then I do Command J, and it just brings the image forward. So just kind of real quickly, you know, if I was to.
I guess I meant like when you're cutting it into that shape, right? So you already got him out of the background, but when you're cutting off like his bust, right? You're like cutting it into the shape. You're clipping him. You're clipping him into a path, right? Like when you're doing that clipping mask down there.
Yes, but he's separated. I've already got him completely out.
I see. That's why.
Yeah,
okay. That makes sense.
I guess some people are a little different. They'll just hold on to everything. I like to separate them just so I can have his background, which his outline, his silhouette, if you will, and then his image on top of it.
Got it. Okay.
And then, you know, like that one color technique that I kind of showed you, you can kind of see how dark his skin is, and you can see a little bit of the grain. This is actually one color. If you lock your pixels, which I'm not sure many people know this technique.
Yeah, show. For those who don't know, show.
It's just lock your pixels, and then you can pick any color, and then using Option, backspace, you fill it with any color you want. And all the pixels are locked, and it's super convenient. I mean, when I used to do before I learned that technique, I was the guy that would take the paint bucket, which never take the paint bucket, and then just try to obviously that doesn't work. It looks terrible. So again, lock your pixels. I holding down Command, I clicked on this image, and then I just created another mask, and it just lightened them up.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a
It's
smart
one
technique.
of my favorite techniques. And then if I feel like he's a little too clean, again, back up here, just went to filter and then added noise. And you don't have to do too much. And you can just, that's the beauty of it. You just keep adding more and more noise till you kind of feel good about it. And you get this super awesome just texture, which it's amazing. And you kind of I just hold on Option and clicked on the mask so you kind of see what it's doing to that piece, and it just adds that really nice grit. Which
that should be your Halloween option. Your alternate version of this. It looks all freaky that way.
And when I was working on this piece, I kind of started feeling like, okay, maybe large color blocks, that would be kind of cool. Just kind of get this X eyes in the back, but just what else do I do?
Subtle,
just subtle, exactly. And then I kind of just for typography, I sometimes kind of struggle a little bit with it. And so instead of just going straight on that, I just liquefied it. I mean, I just thought, let's just be weird. If we're going to be weird, let's just be weird already.
You've already established that elsewhere that you can be weird, so you might as well.
Exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of being abstract. I guess an abstract artist is just anything kind of goes at that point, just adding little pieces here and there. And then that's when I started like adding in the torn paper, which I think kind of finished it off pretty nicely. It wasn't too difficult. And then, when I was looking at this piece, I also felt like it needed a focal point because it's all just one color. And that's when I added this little triangle of bright yellow behind it.
I love that piece too. Yeah. I love the little hint of yellow in there because that totally does draw your eye right to him. And he's obviously scale wise, he is larger.
Mm-hmm.
But all these things, I think it's funny. A lot of designers will do this, and you and I both do this too. When we're talking about how we make things, we'll talk about it as like, I don't know, I just kind of experimented, throwing things around, and it just felt right. It felt right because you're following design principles, and
exactly.
Those principles because you're a designer. And I feel like that's important for other people who are maybe jumping into this thinking that, I can do something awesome. I can do abstract art, which you can. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm saying like this type of stuff. This is like a lot more designed and composed.
Right.
But I feel like having that knowledge, that design background, really does help you because you are playing with scale here. You're playing with your textures. You're playing with all these different.
You put you on the spot. You got to know all your design principles.
I'm going to stop right there. Elements and principles of design. Look them up.
It's knowing the rules, and then you can break them. I think that's something that people say all the time. Once you know the rules, then you can start bending them a little bit. And I think that's kind of where I started with this piece. I think I even tried to do the golden ratio a little bit and just tried to feel like, and it's funny because when you're doing things like this, it's a feeling, and then all of a sudden it just feels right.
Yep.
And then you stop. Because then you keep going and you'll mess it up, And I've obviously done that a million times where I've just gone way too far, especially with abstract stuff. You've gone way too far and you're like, I should have stopped 2 hours ago.
But I feel like I do that with a lot of things, though. But you definitely, it's better to go too far than not far enough because then you can always pull back.
Absolutely. And then, that's another thing I'm sure you do, Brad, is just, this is like version 6. I've saved so many of them. When I start to feel like, okay, I'm going to get weird with it, then I'll save another version of it. And you can always go back. If you just keep saving over the same one, you might have liked it 3 or 4 versions ago and it's gone.
That totally makes sense. I love your comment too about the making. The rules, you can break the rules, but it's funny because you have the Apollo type right there. It like my type instructor would have murdered me.
Would have
murdered me. But it works, and there's no reason why this doesn't work. It's perfect. It's mimicking the texture in the background. It feels cohesive. But I think it's just funny because like there are some of those rules like they're like don't like that was always what I had all these type courses. And I remember them saying like don't harm your type, don't destroy your type, like don't stretch it, don't all that kind of stuff.
I went to like kind of a non-traditional school. It was more of, I guess I could say, more of a fine art school, and I did take graphic design, but it was something that I kind of maybe got into a little later. And I never thought I would be a graphic designer, so it's kind of funny. I barely took any typography classes, and so some of these things that people are telling me about typography, like they can break out little pieces of type and name every part of it. I'm just completely clueless. In Dallas, I'm part of a group called Monsters of Type, and
Oh, yeah.
and we just get together and we talk about type and we talk about work and we talk about design in general. But some of these things that these guys work on, and they talk about all these beautiful parts of the type, and I'm just like, I'm lost. I'm completely lost. So I just sit there and just kind of shake my head a little bit.
You're like, it's a gut feeling. That's what it
It's a
is.
gut feeling. And I'm like, yeah, I did that on purpose. Of course I did that on purpose.
That's how type has to. I took a lot of type courses, but I still feel that way.
And kind of moving toward this one, again, these are just more of these principles. I think I did a screen print version of this, some kind of similar to this. And again, all I did was keep using these textures, and just kind of started, blending them a little bit. Like on this one, for instance, I just decided to multiply this really cool looking texture over the top of it.
I like that.
And that's the beauty of the one color technique is this was probably at one point multicolored. I would struggle to find where I got this. I think it's just oil on water.
Yeah.
And when you create that one color texture, I mean, you can do all kinds of cool things with it.
Yeah, that's sweet.
And it's pretty simple at that. And again, I went back to my comfort zone, which is adding grain. I put everything inside a giant mask, and then I just added grain at the end, and it just kind of makes you feel better. It's hard to explain it, but
it really does.
It does make you feel a lot better.
No, that's cool. No, this piece, I really, really like all these pieces that you've been coming out with. Like, I need some of these newer ones. I need to buy some of these once you have them available. So that's another thing. Oh, go ahead.
I got to get better at screen printing. I'm self-taught. It took me 6 weeks of struggling. And that was funny. I think that's how we met. You bought one of my prints, and I was already a fan of yours, and I was like, oh my God, Brad just bought one of my pieces.
Well, then you sent me an extra print too. And
of course I had to, right?
Dude, and it was amazing. I appreciate it. And I was like, man, this guy's awesome. You undervalued your own work. Like, you talked yourself down. I was like, dude, you're so good.
It's imposter syndrome, where you just feel like you're faking it. You don't know what you're doing. And that's why I sell all my prints for like super cheap. I think I sold them for like $10 or something.
Oh, I know.
Who wants to buy this?
You need to.
I need to work on that.
Raise those prices. You need to put stuff. Yeah, put the stuff in the shop because I need to get more of this stuff on my wall. This stuff's awesome. I love your new stuff.
Thanks.
But okay, now we're seeing a lot of this stuff, and we're seeing all these colors and everything like that. And I'm always talking about the color, how awesome it is. How do you come up with your color palettes?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I do like almost every designer. I do a lot of research. I think the problem is some people feel like if you do too much research, you're going to be influenced too heavily, and then you could be accused of stealing, which all of us would hate that, obviously. But I think if you use research in different ways, for instance, I like to use research for looking for color. That may be something I kind of struggle with a little bit is color. And that's why I have a folder. It's ridiculous. I think I have like 55,000 images in it. And I just mostly go through there, and I keep it random on purpose because I don't want to feel like I need to just look for a specific look or a specific style. I want to be influenced by everything. So, here's just a few, on this piece when I was doing a little bit of research for that abstract. And you'll notice there's really no abstract pieces in here. It's just really cool thing. I think this is kind of what influenced me about doing the background and then having an image over the top of it. I think I'll find it eventually. Here you go. That kind of influenced me a little bit in that direction. I mean, and then just finding colors through that.
And so I know a lot of people ask me too, because that's like I love colors and I like to make really colorful things. But a lot of people will ask me, like, how do you get your colors? Like I just asked you. But people will be like, how do you get all your colors? Like, how do you choose your, you must be doing something like completely different than me. But it's the way that you're explaining it too is like, we kind of steal them from everywhere else.
I mean, and I'm sure this person stole it from somewhere else, right? I mean, and if you kind of look on here, and these are pretty similar. These colors are pretty close, and that's okay. To me, that's okay. I mean, I don't think anybody particularly owns a color. Now they may own a style or whatever, and that's cool too. But I think it's important to also, another thing that's really important too is knowing where this medium is going to live. For instance, this one, I don't plan on printing it. I mean, maybe eventually someday that'd be cool. But, you know, I work in RGB on this one because I know it's going to live online. Yeah. And the colors are going to be more vibrant. They're going to look a lot better than if you try to switch over to CMYK, which we all know looks terrible. And even the way you save your files is something that it took a while for me to really grasp. But I used to just save, if I wanted to post this on Dribbble or something, I would just save it as a JPEG and be done with it. But now, through some research, obviously, I do save for web, and then I just do a PNG, and that makes the colors look so much brighter and cleaner. Yeah. And I mean, it took me I was always, you know, posting things on Dribbble and then seeing how terrible the colors.
They're always dull, I feel like.
Dull. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And then through a little bit of research, I figured it out. You know, it's just like, it seems so obvious. I said, of course you're saving it for the web.
Yeah, save for
you know. I'm a print artist. I don't know what that is, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. But
it's pretty funny.
Well, it's funny we always talk about that, the colors and stuff like that. And the only time people, I feel like I should just put a disclaimer. I guess the only time people really do own a color is when you're doing something that's like if you're working in the same vein as something else. Like
sure,
if you're branding, I think is the biggest one, right? If you're going to be
absolutely.
Even if they don't own the color, it doesn't make sense to have the same thing and have people get confused with your brand.
Yeah. I mean, a good example is if I was decided to do some triangle things like this right here, and then I decided, hey, I'm going to use the same colors. I mean, I'm playing with fire a little bit there. I wouldn't want to do something like that. It's hard to be original, as you well know. I mean, yes. And being a designer, being an artist, you know, I feel like every day we're under the gun a little bit of like, do something cool, do something neat, do something no one's ever seen before.
Something new.
And
it's all a remix.
That's completely impossible. And again, I guess being an abstract artist and an illustrator as well, I try to maybe incorporate the two of them, and maybe that will match something up. Maybe that'll be something kind of new. For sure.
You hit it right on the nail on the head, though. You said you're not influenced by any, like, the problem is when you're sitting there and that's why a lot of young artists look like they're copying people. It's because they are. They don't have enough of inspiration that they've seen, that they've collected, that they, so they're working off of. They're like, yeah, I want to do something like that, and then they kind of look at that constantly as their reference, one or two references, as opposed to you. It's like I'm looking at like 100 different references, and I'm just kind of and you're kind of
trying to find apart colors. I mean, I can look at this and say, I love that red. I love that blue. I love the way the black works with this. It's really cool. I got to use that somehow, some way. And I might. I mean, I think I've even printed. I think those badges that I.
That's the one behind me. Can you see it? I can't see it. Oh
no, I don't see it on there. But I mean, I just did. I think I have an example of it over here somewhere. I just kind of used even those colors a little.
It's the one that was it says 1969, the USA Apollo.
Oh yeah, and
that one you sent me.
I think this is kind of. These are similar.
Yep, I have that one.
I think this is where we first met. Basically, is like the badges. Awesome. Doing the research for this one, there were so many, as you can well imagine, so many badges that were created by, I'm guessing, the government to celebrate man's first step on the moon.
Yeah.
And, some of these sayings pretty much were taken from that. But I try to do something that was not seeing like focusing straight on the moon, focusing, on the individual astronauts, focusing on maybe just a silhouette of a moon and the lunar lander. And then just kind of multiplying these colors to create another look. And this is where I kind of visualized how I thought the screen print was going to look. And that, that was a crazy struggle. Well, I wouldn't suggest teaching yourself how to screen print. It was frustrating, to say the least.
And this is all 2 colors too, which is actually really cool.
Exactly.
How much you were able to accomplish.
I tried to go so simple with it, and it was 6 weeks. I drove my wife crazy. It was nuts.
I'm gonna try now. Now I'm gonna look at the one on my wall. Well, the cool thing about what you do too, and I feel like is a benefit to you if you're getting into screen printing, is that you like the weathered effect.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you do mess up,
I did all that on purpose. Exactly. All the misprints on it. Yeah, it didn't line up. That was all intentional. Obviously,
it feels great. Like I was like, I like that.
I like that. It looks like an amateur did it, right?
No, what you did. I wouldn't have even guessed that you just you taught yourself. I thought it was just done, like professionally done. It was good.
It's so funny. But again, just kind of pouring through some more inspiration. I mean, colors. This was probably done 50, 60 years ago, and I mean, I love it.
There's that one color.
There's that one color. I can't even imagine how hard it was to probably create something like this. But
then yes,
exactly. But it just has a great feeling to it. And again, there's some grain texture that was probably not intentional. It was just something that's all they could do. And when you add those little pieces to your piece, it kind of ties it back to that era a little bit, and then it feels more authentic at that point.
Yeah, it really does. And then you add your own like twist and flair to it on your own, which I feel like you've done with that marbling look,
Exactly.
Cool.
And like on this one, I just tried to do some new techniques, do stuff that kind of got myself out of my comfort zone a little bit. And sometimes I do these as warm-up exercises.
Okay.
Because
I wish that was what my warm-ups look like.
No, it's when you're staring at a blank canvas and somebody tells you draw, go, I think we all lean on stuff that is comfortable to us, and this is something that I definitely lean on. I just kind of start again using shapes, using my torn textures that I've created this big just library of stuff. Which, if you go to my dribble page, there is I think I posted, it's probably a while back now, but I posted some free paper textures that I created, some torn paper textures.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, and I'll have all that in the link below, so people can go through.
And I'm hoping to do more. I think that's also important. You've given away brushes before. Mm-hmm. I've used them. They're great.
Thanks.
I think it's important as designers to give back things like that, because I kind of get joy of seeing somebody taking it and using it for something. I think Amy Hood, I think she took that torn paper that I used, and she used it for her, like the was it 10 by 19 or 10 by 18?
Oh yeah.
She used it, and I was floored. I was like, oh my god, that's
was
so
the
cool.
record covers, isn't that what that is?
Yeah, the record covers.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so cool. I love seeing things that people make with it. Why not? Why not make these textures and just kind of give them away to people?
No, I love that.
And again, on this one,
you won't be rich, but yeah,
no.
I do love that.
No.
And that's not the point. Like what you're doing, I think that is awesome. And even this video alone is helping. I feel like people who are aspiring to do things like what you're doing. This
please hit me up.
Help.
Give me questions. I love to help. And it's awesome because I know that I have picked brains of people like you, and it helps. It helps a lot learning these little techniques. The guy that taught me the one color, it was a throwaway thing. It was just something he was just kind of telling me, and it's changed my design. I mean, I think I learned it like 10 years ago, and I couldn't see myself without it right now.
Yeah, I can, especially with that. So you're in your day job. You don't have to mention companies, but
sure.
You design baseball and like sports cards, right? Like trading cards.
I've been doing it for about 10 years now, and it's kind of crazy. I never thought I would be a trading card artist. I've got a lot of them under my belt, but it's still challenging, which is kind of funny that after 10 years of doing it, almost, it's so much that I still don't know about it.
It's funny because it's like that would have been, if you would have said that was an option, because I was always into art and I collected baseball and basketball cards. If you would have told me that was an option growing up, I'd have been like, yes,
yeah,
that's what I want to do. That's my goal.
That same reaction people get from me whenever I tell them what I do, and they're like, "What? I've got a ton of baseball cards, man." And I'm like, "Yeah,
that's an option.
I may have done that." And what's funny is that people will hold on to those for a long time.
Yeah,
they're little pieces of art,
And
and
history. They will be,
and
you know?
history. Exactly. So I think it's pretty cool. It's definitely a different day job. But then when I come home, that's why I kind of switch gears completely
Yeah.
and start working on illustrations,
I'm,
because
that makes sense.
it's a scratch that I didn't know I needed to itch, or an itch I didn't know I needed to
Yeah,
scratch.
that's it.
I got that backwards.
I didn't even catch it until you said it. Yeah, I wondered too because I was wondering if there's any overlap between the two, your day job and your, like, do you bring in any of that? I mean, I'm assuming your
I think,
techniques,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the trading cards, it's taught me a lot about layout. It's taught me a lot about balance, because I only have a 3.5 by 2.5 canvas. So you have to fit a lot of information on that. And I think that has helped me tremendous. It's just
Yeah.
little things that and it's taught me how to be faster, because I make decisions a lot quicker now. Again, being an illustrator, sometimes you don't trust your fastball.
Yeah.
You feel like you're an imposter, and you're just like, who wants this? And when you find that client that just goes, no, I want your style. That's what I want.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, okay, so I gotta just trust what I'm doing is good and just go with it.
Dude, yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. And I think any sort of job, like I did infographics for a while, and I feel like that's all I did every single day.
But it helps you, right? It helps you with layout. It
so
helps you
much
with
quicker.
balance.
It may not be my favorite stuff to do, but I can relate is what I'm getting at.
Absolutely. And that's kind of, again, here's just another example. This is almost like a riff on this one, but it's just trusting that, hey, what would be kind of cool is if we did Earth, as the middle part of the eyeball here. Okay, let's try it. And if you're fast enough, if you've got these techniques down, these things, you can do them quickly. And if it's not working, you move on.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good point. Test out your theory. Because sometimes I get scared at testing out something because I'm like, it's going to take too long to even
right.
play around with that idea. Like that's my eternal struggle is how much when a client, especially for client work, if a client's asking for something, they want me to do something for them, I have to. It's hard to come up with. Do I give them this really loose sketch and not waste any more time, and then they're just going to shoot this idea down, or is it? I need to make sure it's enough also, so that if they don't have an imagination,
yes,
they know what I'm going for, and I know it's possible.
No, absolutely, and that's and kind of changing gears a little bit. That's why I do a lot of the self-initiated projects, because I'm almost kind of trying to advertise this is the work I'd like to be doing. I think, and what's funny is I've gotten a lot of jobs and a lot of illustration gigs just from them seeing the stuff that I posted on Dribbble, but those things were not from a client. Those were just me just trying out techniques, trying out something new, trying out a style, and it's funny because those is where you get all these little jobs, because you just never know who's looking.
That's a good point.
And maybe I gravitated toward Apollo and through to NASA and to space, but if you're passionate about something, I would just pick that and then try to do something with it. And that's kind of like where I've started just kind of trying to do stamps. My dad is a postman. He's been a postman for almost 40 years. Yeah, and I kind of always liked stamps, and I thought it would be really, really cool if I just started designing my own. Maybe somehow, some way, somebody from, the U.S. Postal Service will see it, and maybe they'll invite me to design a stamp, which would be amazing.
I have someone to introduce you to, actually.
Exactly. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And if it works, great. I mean, that's awesome. If not, somebody else will see it, and maybe somebody else will, like it and say, hey, give me a shot doing something along that line.
Yeah. No. That's perfect. And this is what you're working on now. Have you shown these? I don't think I've seen these.
I posted a couple of these. These
I've seen the one in the bottom there, the bottom left. Yes. I feel like I saw.
Yes. And again, it's using. I kind of started trying to challenge myself a little bit. Of again, a stamp is pretty small. How do you lay it out where it feels right, where it doesn't feel like cramped? Using your design principles again, which. Here we are again.
I should just list them on the screen, so I should
just have them scroll. Just have them scroll right now.
Just scroll on the side, so we don't have to name them all.
Kids, make sure you're sticking to those rules. And I grabbed my influence again from some of these posters that I saw online that I thought were really cool, and I bring them directly into Illustrator, and just kind of so I can quickly reference them. Just kind of come over here and it's like, oh, I see. Oh, balance. Wow, really cool. Color, nice. And that's where I kind of started. And then, I kind of started adding a little bit of texture here too, some grain texture and keeping it all vector, which is nice. Keep it sharp.
So how do you do vector grain textures? Because do you do TIFF? Do you do TIFF textures, or how do you do it?
You can do TIFF. You can do bitmap as well, which is really cool.
Okay.
But for this one, this is actually a brush. I think these were created by Grain. What is? I forgot. It's escaping my head right now.
I forgot the name of it.
True Grit.
Oh, True Grit. Okay, yeah.
Yes. And a little technique that I learned. Let me just kind of copy this real quick and kind of show you. I'm not sure who taught me this one, but when I learned it, sometimes I'll just go on Google and I'll say like Illustrator tips, Photoshop tips, and some of these things are so obvious, but I wasn't using them. And when you learn it, it's amazing.
You can't know everything.
No, you can't know everything. Like for instance, this one right here, this is just a shape that I have here, and I'll just go ahead and make it a little brighter so you can kind of see. But if I wanted to get this texture,
is that a brush? Is that what that is?
That's a brush. Yeah.
Oh, it's a brush. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a path that's just...
Yes. I just kind of, I have a Cintiq, and I just kind of, I usually just do something like that, and then I just hit the brush tool, and it creates a nice...
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, that's nice.
But if, back in the day, I would probably take this shape, I would try to make a mask out of it and stuff, but now I quickly just learned if you do the draw inside technique, it should create this little bounding box right here, and I'll just get this out of here. And when you create that draw inside, or when you click that draw inside and you just paste it, I believe it conforms directly to that shape.
Wait a minute. This is blowing my mind a little bit.
And it cleans everything up for you.
Do it in slow motion. Do it again.
Yeah,
One more time. Man, now this is for me now.
I'm teaching Brad something.
You're teaching me something. Yeah, and I teach Illustrator. I teach, but there's always some other new technique that someone's...
Sure, and that's what I'm telling you. Learn from somebody. Usually everybody's got draw normal, and I'll kind of hide some of these things so you can kind of see a little bit more.
Yeah.
Gene doesn't die on me here. As you can kind of see, that I just had this shape right here. There you go. Okay, and it's always on draw normal.
Where's that? So that's at the bottom of your tool.
Yeah, it's usually down here at the bottom. Okay. I'll tell you something else about tools, but and I just hit draw inside, and this creates this really cool little bounding box right here. So there's actually 3 modes: draw inside, draw behind, and draw normal, draw behind, and draw inside. And then I had that texture that I created, and I just hit paste. And it should conform to just this shape right here.
So is that the equivalent of locking pixels in Photoshop?
Very close. Yeah, you're basically creating a mask that it lives in, and it doesn't come out of that shape. And what's cool about it is obviously you can come back down here, you can change the color of it, no big deal. But
oh my gosh.
For forever, while it's in that mode, you can keep going, add another one.
So if I switched that mode back off though, and I didn't want that effect on like another shape, it only is affected on that shape.
It's only affected on that shape.
Shut the front door, man. I should have been. It's good. I have a project coming up. I'm going to use that.
Let me tell you, I'm using that right now on a current project that I'm working on, and it's a lifesaver. I'm not having to create clipping masks. I'm not having to. Everything just lives in there. If I wanted to double it up, if I wanted to add another texture on there, I just drag it over to the side, and it's in there. It's conformed. It's not spilling out. Even when you go to Command Y and look at your kind of outline mode, you can see that it's spilling out of this shape right here. But it's back in this mode. It's contained. It's really cool.
Man, stop the video now. We're good. We got it all. That's what I wanted out of this.
That's the $1 million tip. That's the $1 million tip.
It's all worth it now.
Absolutely.
No,
that's one of my favorite tips. That has changed the way I've added textures. I used to do all my textures in Photoshop. Nah, not anymore. I do it in Illustrator, and it keeps it super clean, and the file size is a little bit smaller. It's a game changer for sure.
Wow. Shoot, I'm glad I asked about that texture stuff.
Sure.
No, that's sweet. Man, well, I think we're getting to the tail end of here, and
Sure.
you've shown me more than I could have ever asked for here. So I really appreciate you sitting down with me and walking through all these different projects that you're working on. And I feel like for me, abstract art can be a little intimidating.
Sure.
Especially if you see what I do. I don't typically do a ton of abstract. I base mine off of reality, and I just kind of make it more fun and colorful, basically. But the abstract art. Well, I really appreciated your words on it because it helps it kind of ground it a little bit more for me and take. If anything, it almost feels like it should be less stress to do something like this because you're okay. You're free to do
You're okay
experiment
to do.
and yeah.
And that's what my tip would be to somebody. I mean, if you're stuck on something, why not give it a shot? Give it a shot, kind of get your wheels moving a little bit, get out of that little rut, and then all of a sudden you'll see that things start opening up for you a little bit more. You'll be a little bit more free to try something new. And then, like I said, it'll be something that just kind of maybe prompts you in another direction.
Yeah. Shoot. Well, this has been enlightening, and I I appreciate it. You never give yourself enough credit, so I'm glad we're on here and you're teaching me things, and everybody else. We all really appreciate it.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for making the time. Did you want to give any parting words? I mean, I guess you're not parting words. If you do have parting words, please.
Sure. I'm hoping that you share my email.
Yep.
I mean, like I said, I'm available obviously on Dribble, Instagram. But just if you have questions, especially if you're a new student or whatever, just feel free to hit me up. I love teaching. There's a technique maybe I can learn from you. So
yeah. But so you're a baseball
anytime.
coach too, so you are a teacher.
Baseball coach too. That's
like, I'm
not enough hours
exhausted.
a day.
No, that's awesome. Okay, and I'll make sure all those things are below, and a link to your shop as well will be below. Hopefully you're going to be loading that.
I have limited quantities because
you're just going to be all sold.
Dirt. So yeah, it's dirt cheap stuff on there. So
yeah, well, I'm excited for the next batch of goodies that you're going to put in your shop. I know it's a lot of work for you, but you should definitely charge a little more for that, man. You do great work.
Thank you.
Well, that about wraps things up. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and watching this video. It's been an absolute pleasure having John here working with us, sharing some bits of wisdom and also just those invaluable tips in Photoshop and Illustrator for collage work. All super handy stuff, and hopefully you're able to use it in your own projects. As always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.